Justin Jefferson did his best Lloyd Christmas impression as he secured the bag. He got the Samsonite. And as a record breaking deal for a wide receiver, it is the talk of the town. And Justin Jefferson really deserved this. The NBA Finals, as well as the NCAA College Women's World Series softball, is set, as well as the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. It's that time of the year where all the finals are all at once, and I'm all for it. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today, as usual, are both my co-hosts. First, we've got David Street.
What's up, everybody? And howdy.
And secondly, we got Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
David will explain more of that howdy here in a bit, I promise.
Yes.
But Justin Jefferson, like I said, he got that Samsonite. He secured that bag in a deal that he had been waiting for some time. We knew it was going to happen just with the production that he has done on the field. It speaks for itself, and we knew that he was going to get a top contract. I know there was always rumblings of a possible trade, but he did end up getting the contract, the bag, for a 4-year, $140 million extension, which is about $35 million a year with $110 million guaranteed. This wide receiver market, guys, it just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there is a lot of talented wide receivers out there. We know Jamar Chase will probably also get a big deal here soon, too. Which was Justin Jefferson's college teammate, and it's crazy that they both came out of LSU, and that team was just amazing. But guys, Justin Jefferson, you agree? Everything that he did production-wise, he deserved this type of contract?
Yeah. I mean, the dude's the top three. You could argue the best receiver in the game right now, you know? And there's people out there saying that he's that he's overpaid. Now, I haven't seen people say that, but how do I know they're saying that? Because this happens literally every time someone gets a new contract extension. There's always that group of morons that say overpaid, way too much money, and all that. Okay, well, no, well, I'm not going to go on a whole spiel about economics and all that. All I'm going to say is that yes, 100% Justin Jefferson definitely deserved this contract, and I'm very happy that he got it.
I agree with you. It's a contract that sets the wide receiver market at 10% of what the salary cap is.
Bingo.
And he has certainly made himself the type of receiver that is deserving of this contract. We've just got to see what the Vikings can do with 90% of their salary left.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound contradicting here because he did have a little bit of an injury here, but he is very dependable. I want to say it's 98.7 average receiving yards a game is actually an NFL record as of right now with a minimum of 50 games played. He is consistent with how many yards his production is every game, and he's clutch there. I mean, we all saw the catch against the Bills. I still don't know how he made that catch till this day. It was truly incredible, but that's the type of receiver he is. But who's the biggest winner here? Most likely any announcer when they get to say JJ to JJ, at least for the next 4 years at least. It seems like that was just written immediately when JJ McCarthy was drafted.
Who coined that? Me? Well, at least here.
Yeah, I know someone here. I wasn't sure if it was you or Ed, but yes, every announcer now is just going to have a field day with I'm sure they'll have a nickname eventually here.
And I will certainly coin the fact that the biggest winner here was Kirk Cousins. Because he got that contract based upon Justin Jefferson being the wide receiver that he is.
Kirk Cousins has just continued to be the biggest winner who has yet to win anything except for
Yeah.
an amazing contract because I don't know really what he's done to deserve these type of contracts that he has. Maybe it's because right next to his name it says QB, but it's like it's kind of absurd on some of these contracts that have been
It's
thrown around out there.
like when it comes to Kirk Cousins, he's never good enough to lead you to a Super Bowl, but he's also never bad enough to lead you to a losing season. And
Yeah,
guys, do you know what we call that?
mid.
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 Right there, right there. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Super Bowls because speaking of Super Bowls, you look at the list of some of these top paid receivers and ones who got extensions this offseason alone. And what do they mainly have in common? No Super Bowls. Uh, Tyreek Hill, who was one of the highest paid wide receivers going into this offseason, does have a Super Bowl win as he won with the Chiefs. But AJ Brown, who up until this point, I want to say was the highest paid receiver because he did get this extension in the offseason. He's been to a Super Bowl, hasn't won one. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's an up and comer. Jalen Waddle, which we did see, just got the extension. I mean, there is a long list here, guys, and I want to get your thoughts on all
Matthew,
that.
what the hell did you do?
You know what, guys? If you haven't read the papers lately, I mean, who reads the papers? So I could be telling you the truth or not, but you may or may not see my name in there. But yeah, I am in a hospital, so sorry for the sirens, guys. But uh, receivers aren't like the quarterback position, but are you starting to see a trend here that some of the top paid receivers they really aren't known to be Super Bowl winners?
Ed.
I'm definitely seeing more trending toward this wide receiver market has got to burst at some point. It is a bubble that, yes, offense is leading to more passing yards, more run after catch, more yards downfield. It is all of that. But but the wide receivers aren't necessarily the most athletic person on the team anymore. You see a lot of those playing quarterback. So you have your Lamar Jacksons and Tua's and all those. Tua's not more athletic than Tyreek Hill, but still in that vein, he is a very athletic quarterback. And the fact that wide receivers are getting quarterback money at this point, that says something to either A, you think that you can get by without paying a top end quarterback what he's worth because you have the wide receivers, or you're just going to piss away most of a larger chunk of your salary cap to pay these wide receivers, and the best teams are going to have two number ones instead of a one and a two.
I feel like even though this wasn't that long ago, this was only 2, maybe 3 years ago at this point. But I feel like the last time that a team won the Super Bowl with a truly elite wide receiver was the Los Angeles Rams with Cooper Kupp when he had arguably the best year that a receiver ever had. I mean he won the receiving triple crown, I think, won a Super Bowl, won Super Bowl MVP. And maybe this is not fair to Kupp, but I feel like it feels like at this point he was a 1 year wonder, even though that 1 year was certainly a hell of a year, wasn't it?
But is Cooper Kupp really considered to be in the same elite class as Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, and Mike Evans?
I don't think so, and that is partially why I said that Cooper Kupp does seem like a 1 year wonder. Like he just went off for 1 year and then just kind of, I don't know, fell off the face of the earth.
This is where, and I'm going on a mini rant really quick. This is where the NFL's drunk to me a little bit, and I know there's more on the economic side to things, but one of the most athletic players out there actually was in the news today because he got a contract extension, and that was Christian McCaffrey. And the running back position is really disrespected when you see a deal like this. $35 million a year for Justin Jefferson. He's making almost double of what the highest paid running back in the NFL is, and that's now Christian McCaffrey at 19 million. And guys, Christian McCaffrey is worth as much as Justin Jefferson is, in my opinion. Christian McCaffrey can do anything. That's just how talented he is. That's how athletic he is. But he's now the highest paid at 19 million a year as a running back with this extension, and it's like just seems disrespectful to me.
Like disrespectful because he should get more.
Well, yeah, because Justin Jefferson's pretty much Justin Jeff, no disrespect there, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, who hasn't been in the league nearly as long as Christian McCaffrey, is getting paid more,
Mm,
almost double more than Christian McCaffrey is. It's
yeah.
like I just think it's crazy because the running back position is just bottom, kind of bottom tier when it comes to those contracts.
Well, I'll just
And
add my 2 cents here, and then and then I'll bring it over to Ed. The unfortunate reality is that the running back position is just not as valuable as it was before, and like we've talked about this before. But I'll bring up again that I'm not saying it happens, but I would not be surprised if at some point the running back position like goes extinct. Now, Ed offered a very good disagreement with that, but I would not be surprised if the running back position goes extinct at at some point, just because yeah, like I said, it's just not as valuable. I mean, when's the last time that a team won the Super Bowl like with an elite running back? So
How dare you have that disrespect on Isaiah Pacheco? Okay,
and I know we've talked about this before, but it adds to the convo.
so Christian McCaffrey, he is a player that gets the ball in the backfield, on the edge, down the field, in every way, shape, and form possible that a player can get the ball. Yet he is half as valuable as a guy that only gets the ball by motioning into a slot or playing the outside against 1 to 2 bracket coverage guys. I think I'm with you, Matthew. I think it's disrespectful to the running back market. I do feel that at some point there will be a rotation of what's more important happen in the NFL because as soon as one thing gets figured out, the everybody's on to the next thing. And until that gets figured out, everybody's on to the next thing. And guess what? By the time you get to the third thing, you go back to the first thing again. It's cyclical, and it's going to happen where it goes back to the running backs being the workhorses of the offense. Right now, we're just in a trend where the wide receivers are the workhorses, and every fantasy owner absolutely loves this.
yeah, yeah. It will. We're not probably ever going to go back to the days of the Sean Alexanders and the LaDainian Tomlinsons who set the records for most touchdowns in a season. But a name that I want to drop here who actually just officially retired, who I thought was retired this whole time, was David Johnson. When David Johnson really hit the scene for the Cardinals, he kind of reinvented a running back position. Running backs did have caught passes before, but what David Johnson did that one year really reinvented a running back position to also kind of flex as wide receivers who could catch the ball more downfield. And now that's where David, I don't think the running back position will ever be extinct, but I think it'll always go hand in hand for the most part as a running back who could also play wide receiver, unless you're Derrick Henry, who is a modern day Sean Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly I do agree that yes, of all the running backs that deserve to be the highest paid, it is definitely Christian McCaffrey because I have always believed, like at least in this era of NFL that we're in right now, I have always believed that the best running backs are also the ones who are pass catchers because they contribute to how offenses are run today, how modern NFL style offenses are run today.
And here's the thing: Christian McCaffrey could do punts, could do kick returns. I mean, he would probably lead the league in touchdowns every year if they allowed him to do that. He's just that good. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch his tape at Stanford. I know that's college, but that
Who
just shows you.
who won the Heisman the year that McCaffrey was a finalist? Was that wasn't Kyler Murray, was it?
See, when he was a finalist, it was
No, it was further back than that.
yeah,
But
I know.
he was shunned.
Oh,
It
was it?
wasn't Mariota.
It might have been
Um,
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I think it was Mayfield. I
Yeah.
think this came up in a conversation I was having a few days ago.
I mean,
yeah.
when you look back, it's like, how the hell did McCaffrey not win? I mean, I think we all know why, West Coast and all that. But still, how the hell did he not win the award?
That was one of the best offensive performances you'll ever see in college football. Was Christian McCaffrey, or just overall?
Yeah, yeah.
Because he finished playing every weekend when the sports writers were waking up the
Yeah,
next day
right?
for on the East Coast.
Yeah. But to also point out some other names to mention on wide receivers that got extensions, Devontae Smith with the Eagles, they damn near re-signed and signed everyone. I don't know how they did it. Nico Collins, Jerry Jeudy, who went to the Browns, Michael Pittman Jr. with the Colts, and Calvin Ridley, who we've talked about before. Got a contract that probably wasn't really deserving of that amount, but Calvin Ridley is a very talented receiver. But the question after all this, when this news comes up instantly, it's what does this do for CD Lamb and some of these other wide receivers that are wanting a deal? Because CD Lamb is a big time wide receiver.
Is he up for a contract this offseason?
Well,
He's on his 5th year and he's due to
Yeah.
get that extension.
Yeah.
just like Justin Jefferson, just like a lot of these guys, that it's all about that 5th year option in the extension. Everyone does it now, but CD Lamb is obviously noticeable holding out from OTAs.
Yeah. Oh, let me just say that if the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm not trying to imply that they're broke because they're obviously not, but if the Minnesota Vikings sign Justin Jefferson to the highest deal, the Cowboys are definitely going to sign CeeDee Lamb to the highest deal ever, I feel like, for a wide receiver.
Well,
No, I don't think they
Really?
yeah, as long as Jerry Jones is there. I mean, we've talked about that a lot, but
Fair.
the Cowboys have had it. I'm not the only one saying this. You look at it online. Cowboys have had the worst offseason. From losing players, from not picking up anyone in free agency. Their draft was horrible, and they have yet to re-sign any of their star players. You have Dak, you have CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons eventually is going to get this extension too. And I kind of feel like they've shot themselves in the foot because they've waited out so long. You have now seen the price tag for CD Lamb go above this than this computer camera can even see. It's just they've really done themselves dirty by doing that.
every one of those guys has gotten more expensive every day that they're not signed.
Absolutely, and what's crazy is that you're not even seeing a defensive end or outside linebacker like a Micah Parsons get a big deal right now because they've already been getting the last couple off seasons, but his price tag is still going up, just like Ed said.
By the way, doesn't it feel like Dak Prescott has been on the final year of his contract for like the past 5 years or so?
That's it's kind of cutthroat in Dallas. You don't win playoff games. It's pretty much you're at the end of
Yeah.
your contract right then.
Mhm.
I'm sure Ed can agree with that. But yeah. So CD Lamb, like I said, this does up the price. CD
Mhm.
Lamb, in my opinion, is not in the same realm as Justin Jefferson, but CD Lamb, I think you could put in the top 10 of best wide receivers in the league. But this is going to be tough because you are seeing wide receiver contracts in the 30 million average yearly now. So this does do a lot uh, to that contract that he will be getting soon. David, I mean, you kind of agree with that he's probably in the top 10, but not really deserving those numbers.
I would say so. CeeDee Lamb, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, or maybe top five. I mean, who's better than him? I think we all agree that Justin Jefferson's better. Tyreek Hill. Uh, who else? Mike Evans. I mean, I'm saying that with the bias viewpoint, but
Of course you would. Just like I would say
Devontae
Devontae Adams
Adams.
is going to be up there.
yeah,
I don't think CeeDee Lamb is in the same stratosphere as Justin Jefferson. he is certainly top 10, but I don't think he has proven himself to be as consistently high end as what Justin Jefferson has proven so far.
Yeah,
Whatever. By the way, whatever happened with DeAndre Hopkins, because there was a good 3, 4, maybe 5 year stretch where he was considered to be the best wide receiver in the game, and then he just, I mean, he is getting old. I feel like in age, is he?
yeah.
Well,
Well, he
yeah,
he got stuck with Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis. That kind of explains some of it.
yeah,
It all started when he went to the Cardinals, and
Yeah.
then it
yeah.
kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah. I just
Mhm.
remembered that like one of the reasons why he was considered to be the best or not quarterback, best receiver in the game was because he was producing with dog crap quarterbacks in Houston.
Yeah.
Just to kind of circle back on this CD Lamb contract conversation, do we do we think it's a point to where they have to choose CD Lamb or Dak Prescott to make that signing? Because I don't think they're going to get rid of Michael Parsons. I don't think they're going to let him walk.
That would be,
So,
yeah.
how do they work that
Yeah.
in
I
a
mean,
way that allows uh, for them to keep one of these marquee offensive players? Because I don't think they're going to be able to give up a third of their overall salary cap to three players.
well, I do agree. They're definitely not. There's no way they're going to let Parsons walk because Jerry Jones is dumb, but he's not that dumb.
Well, out of those three players, there's only one, and it's the obvious choice that you'll let walk, and that's Dak. I think that you give CD Lamb the contract, and I think that you see how this year goes. And if it doesn't go so well, you could live with that because you could always get a guy from just a little bit down south over in Austin, Texas, by the name of Quinn Ewers, and he could stay inside the Lone Star State and go to the Dallas Cowboys.
Jerry is such a spiteful person that he would never do that.
Yeah.
I think he's only, in the entire time he's been with the Cowboys, I think there's only been two, maybe two Longhorns that he has drafted. And one of them was Connor Williams.
Yeah. Well, then maybe not, but they will. I feel like have to kind of circle back to the drawing board because I think that they don't have Dak next year. I think that Dak will be a free agent, and I think that they'll be better off giving the money to C.D. Lamb and Micah Parsons, and then kind of seeing which quarterback they could get, whether it's via free agency or the draft or possibly a trade. But Ed, you had a pretty fun fact as far as two of the top 25 receiving yard leaders from last year. Do you want to elaborate more on that?
Yeah. For we already talked about one of them, Cooper Cup, uh, being one of only two of the top 25 receiving yards leaders from last year, won a Super Bowl with their current team. David, can you guess who the other one is?
Mike Evans.
Hey, Gold
Yes.
Star.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at all the, this kind of ties into this conversation that we're having about these wide receivers and their massive contracts. Yes, the Chiefs have cornered the market on Super Bowls right now, but that doesn't mean uh, that it's necessarily dropping the quality from the wide receivers that are out there. But it is something that they cannot have in their cap when they are making these deals. Is, oh well, I helped you win a Super Bowl. No, you didn't, because the only person that's really helping a Super Bowl wins is Travis Kelsey, and he ain't even a wide receiver.
Does it? Doesn't it feel like? And I feel like you're probably implying this, Ed, but it does kind of feel like the Chiefs are kind of taking the Brady Patriots approach, where it's like, hey, you know what, like F it, we'll just throw whoever's out there as long as Patrick Mahomes is quarterback, as long as Tom Brady's quarterback, ignoring the obvious fact that they have Travis Kelsey, yes, but my point still applies.
Well, the Patriots had Gronk, so there you
Well,
go.
yeah, that too.
Yeah, I like the parallels there because there is a lot of parallels there with the Patriots. Never really had a star wide receiver. I mean, the one year they did get Randy Moss. We saw what happened there. They were so dominant, but then they ran into his Lex Luthor, and that being Eli Manning in the Super Bowl. Sometimes it's just your kryptonite.
Bus mode, baby.
And I'm going to make a wild idea prediction right now. Next year, the Raiders wind up with Dak Prescott throwing to Brock Bowers. And that is from the Cowboys trading up to get a quarterback in the first round. And they wind up trading to the Raiders, throwing Dak Prescott in the deal.
Okay. I can see that. I mean, because I feel like the Raiders aren't really secured in their future at the quarterback position right now.
No, I mean, do you really trust Aiden O'Connell or whoever
Uncle
the other
Rico,
guy is?
Uncle
Who?
Rico, Gardner.
Oh
Minshew.
yeah. The guy from Washington State.
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew.
Well, Ed,
that's going to be the next. It'll be the Dak and Brock show.
The Dak and Brock, yeah.
Dak Brock.
Team Ramrod. Well, I saw something earlier, and I know this is going to get Ed worked up, and this is why I really want to bring it up because we just talked about Eli Manning. Did you guys see the comment CJ Stroud said that he would rather have a Eli Manning career versus an Aaron Rodgers career?
I mean, it's hard to blame him when you consider the fact that Eli Manning has 2 Super Bowl rings, even though Aaron Rodgers is unquestionably the better quarterback.
Aaron Rodgers has 1 Super Bowl ring versus 2.
But that 2 Super Bowl wins is probably going to get Eli in the Hall of Fame. Aaron Rodgers, otherwise his stats will.
Yeah, and what also helps is that Eli won Super Bowl MVP both times. Like that's probably enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. Maybe not first ballot, but
yeah, it's
Hall of Fame,
jacked up. I mean, jacked up. Plexico Burress shot himself, and he caught the game-winning pass in the Super Bowl. He should have won it. Okay.
Tyreek's helmet should be.
Yeah.
Should be the MVP.
The bubble gum on top of it. But I want to do this exercise really quick before we get on to the next topic. And I want you guys to participate as well in the comments. As I ask these questions, let us know who you would rather have. So I'm going to ask the guys here. In NFL roster right now, who would you rather pay as the best non-quarterback player? The left tackle position or the wide receiver position?
Oh,
David.
Go.
No question for me. Left tackle, easily, hands down, right? Like
Tristan Wirfs.
Exactly. But like we have seen it. We have seen teams win Super Bowls without an elite receiver. Again, I know the Chiefs have Travis Kelsey. Okay, let's just ignore that obvious fact. Okay, other than that, okay, we have seen teams win Super Bowls without truly elite receivers, right? But you take away an elite left tackle, a very good left tackle, and your quarterback is toast. So no debate, no discussion. Left tackle easily.
So I will start with left tackle and think Trent Williams versus Justin Jefferson. Let's put some names to this conversation. And when you're talking about a single player that's part of a collective group in the offensive line, that one player on the left side that you leave on an island against the best pass rusher on the other side, or your wide receiver that you leave on an island with the best cornerback on the other side. That's kind of where we're at. And I think it depends on the offensive system that you run. If you're in Sean Payton's system, you take the wide receiver all day. If you're in Kyle Shanahan's system, you go left tackle all day. Because in Sean Payton's system, there are plenty of immediate checkdowns that if a quarterback is in trouble, he can get to. But the fact that you have a top end wide receiver, you could check it just in the vicinity of where that wide receiver is going to be, and he's expected to go get that. That's his job. But you have a system like Kyle Shanahan's where you need to give your quarterback that extra second and a half to make your throw downfield to Debo Samuels. Probably not Brandon Ayuk because of the high cash flow situation. Whoever it is downfield, then you need that left tackle. Overall, as far as how I'm building a team and what my philosophies would be, I would take the left tackle all day, every day.
Yep, it's building the trenches up, and that's really what's going to help these teams, especially your quarterback on the blind side. Most quarterbacks are right-handed, so that is their blind side, and it is really key to have that protected. So I think we're all in agreement here. Left tackle is where we would put that. Next one is defensive end and cornerback. So defensive end, you could if it's an outside linebacker that's act as a defensive end, you could categorize that as well. But for the sake of the argument, we just mentioned him. Let's do Micah Parsons versus maybe a Jair Alexander. I'm trying to think who's another top cornerback in the league right now, or L'Jarius Sneed. Let's say that he just got a big deal.
Or
So
Sauce Gardner, or
yeah. So same question, but different positions. Where would you want to spend that at? I'll start with you, Ed.
I'm actually going to go with cornerback because locking down your main offensive weapons in today's NFL is different than it was 10, 15 years ago. So locking down those number one receivers on both sides to where you could put them on an island a la Deion Sanders, I think that's more important than a defensive end at this point because there's different ways to gain pressure than just a defensive end or outside linebacker rushing the quarterback every play.
Yeah. But David, go ahead and answer as well. You don't have to go too much in depth because this is actually going to kind of spoil over to our next topic as well.
This is a lot tougher for me than the left tackle versus wide receiver debate. Because I feel like there are some ways where the defensive end is more valuable than the cornerback position. An example, and granted, this was 8 years ago, so just take that with a grain of salt. But we remember when the Carolina Panthers went 15-1, like Josh Norman, I think, led the league in interceptions. To me, that was a clear case of Carolina having a very stout front seven, and because they were able to create all those pressures, they essentially forced quarterbacks to throw easy picks to Josh Norman, and now we haven't really heard from Josh Norman since. I think he's actually retired from the league. Now, again, as I said, that was almost 10 years ago. When you're talking about it today, I mean, I really want to be a contrarian, but Ed, I can't argue against you. I agree. I think I would pay cornerbacks now at this point, especially when you're talking about offenses today, trying to lock up your best weapons, which are your receivers, and in other cases your tight end. But when you're talking about locking up your best offensive weapons, which is your receiver, you're going to want to give the most bucks to the position that is primarily responsible for holding those guys in check. So yeah, tough for me, but ultimately I agree with you. I would pay the cornerbacks over the defensive end.
Yep, I mean the cornerbacks I think is a tougher position, and because of that, I do think that they deserve to be rewarded for that. But I'll sound like kind of like a homer here because my team has T.J. Watt. But yeah, this is where it's really important because there's also a guy in the league named Myles Garrett. There is a lot of studs out there at the defensive end position that because of how dominant they are constantly getting double teamed, that it is opening up the door for other players out there to pressure the quarterback, to get the sacks, whatever it may be. And it does change the outcome of the game. And I've seen that more and more. And that's why I think we have been seeing them get rewarded with bigger contracts now on the defensive side of the ball. So,
And is it just me, or has the defensive tackle position just become less and less relevant, less and less valuable these days? I mean, like the past 10 years or so, when you're talking, like when Aaron Donald was playing, he was hands down the best defensive tackle, best defensive player, period. But like other than him, no defensive tackles have really stood out. So I really feel like the defensive tackle position is kind of losing its value.
well, it's kind of hard to
Well,
stand.
I certainly think that the defensive tackle position has become a position that moves around the line and not just anchoring the center of the line. And that all started with J.J. Watt. He was the defensive tackle, and they would move him to outside to be an edge rusher. They would move him over the guard, over the C gap. They would move him inside to the A gap, just depending on what the defensive call was. So the traditional Warren Sapp type, Casey Hampton, sit in the middle and clog up the center and the both A gaps with just how wide your body is. I don't think that is a viable option in the defensive lines of today's defenses, just because they have to be so multiple all the time.
Yeah.
Exactly. And since we are talking about defensive line here, I want to mention Dan Campbell's comments about sacks count just as much. Do sacks count just as much as pressures? Because he feels that it does not count as much, and that it is more of a loaded stat. Detroit was ranked 23rd in the NFL with sacks last year at 41. So is he just saying that because, well, they were on the bottom half of the stat, or was he saying that because they thrived in other metrics besides sacks? David, I'll go ahead and start with you here because I know you have a lot to say when it comes to this.
So just to be clear here, Dan Campbell was essentially saying that sacks are not the end all be all.
Correct.
I agree with him completely. And let's take his player. Uh, oh God, Hutchinson,
Aiden
Aiden
Hutchinson?
Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. Let's take Aiden Hutchinson for example. Okay, like I've seen dummies on Twitter insist that he's overrated because his sack numbers are not there. Okay, yeah, true, his sack numbers were not there. Okay, but if you looked, he was top three, maybe top four in pressures produced. Right, like are sacks helpful? Yes, but I think at the end of the day, more often than not, they're just more of a sexy stat than than anything. Look at a guy like Chris Jones of the Chiefs. If I recall correctly, his rookie season, he only put up 2 sacks all season long, but he also amassed a crap ton of pressures. Right? He got to the quarterback in other different ways, and I think we've kind of been conditioned to believe that if a defensive player is not like literally tackling a quarterback behind the line of scrimmage, then he's not doing a very good job. But I think we need to kind of just get rid of that mindset, because at the end of the day, like I said, sacks are great, but they're not the end all be all. There are other ways to get to the quarterback. And I apologize because I'm basically kind of repeating myself, but it always drives me so crazy when people go on their stupid rants about, oh, he doesn't have a lot of sacks, he's overrated. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of sacks, okay? But have you seen the amount of pressures that he's putting up? So that's just my 2 cents right there.
When it comes to pressures, let's all go back in the Wayback Machine for a second. The NFL took away how you can sack a quarterback. For many, many years, sacking a quarterback was getting them on the ground and landing on them and doing as much damage as possible to the quarterback to disrupt the headspace of the quarterback, because then he starts hearing footsteps faster and faster and faster. Now I feel like with the way the NFL is now, being such a ticky tack league, that the pressures do mean more than sacks because of the timing that they need to have these routes run the for the offenses to be sufficient and successful, matriculating themselves down the field, as Hank, as old Hank would say.
And you know what's
So
real?
go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to just follow up and say the idea that you can get a quarterback off of his spot through a pressure is just as valuable as getting him off his spot with a sack. But to me, that sack, that physically taking down of the quarterback, still means more in the quarterback's head, but it doesn't mean as much when you're talking about the success of a play or more.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you didn't finish your thought yet. But what I was going to say was that as crazy as this is to believe, I don't think sacks were always an official stat. Like they were added, you know, sometime after the NFL was formed. But I don't think sacks were always an official stat. If I
1982.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah, it has changed, and uh, there's not that fear that used to be, but the pressure I think is very important nowadays, and I think that needs to be included in a lot of conversations. We saw that with Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald never led the league in sacks. He wasn't never, even up there in top 10, but it was his pressures, it was the double teams on him that really made playing against him so fearful that it was hard to game plan against someone who was just going to dominate you. So I think Dan Campbell is onto something when he says that, and that sacks aren't as hyped up as it really should be.
I thought there, I thought there was at least one year where Aaron Donald maybe not led the league in sacks, but was like damn near close to it because he did have a few 10+ sack seasons.
Yeah, but he was never known mainly for that. So I mean, he
Right.
has
Yeah.
been up there, but it was more of everything else that he did. Just him being on the field alone was
I got you.
enough to. But talk. I want to talk about a player that in his time prevented a lot of these pressures, a lot of these sacks, and during his time had created the room for one of the best running backs we have ever seen in the NFL, and that is none other than Larry Allen of the Dallas Cowboys, who fortunately has passed away at the age of 52. This was sad to hear. It really was because 52 years old, he still had a lot of life ahead of him. Larry Allen was a tremendous football player. If you had a chance to watch him, it was a privilege because what he made Emmitt Smith even more famous. Emmitt Smith is an amazing running back, but Larry Allen did create that hole for him, literally and figuratively, to that success that Emmitt Smith had. But I have a really quick story about Larry Allen. After I graduated high school, one of my first jobs, I worked with a guy named Greg who was actually best friends with Larry Allen. They went to Butte College together. They were roommates. They met then, and they hit it off so much that they literally became best friends. And they were pretty inseparable. They talked to each other every single day. And I remember one day, this on social media. It was one of those fake ads that came up, but I didn't realize it at the time. And it said uh, famous NFL players that passed away, and it said Larry Allen. And I remember reading that out loud, and my coworker Greg almost busted out in tears because this was his best friend. I mean, he got on his phone so fast to call his wife, and then once I realized it was fake, I felt horrible because I thought it was real. And when I saw that alert that he passed away, I instantly went back to that story because I remember it like it was yesterday. His reaction, because he loved Larry Allen. That was his brother. That was his best friend. And uh, I know for a fact once he heard the news of his passing, he probably had that same reaction he had that same day, if not worse. So, my thoughts and prayers go out to Larry Allen's family, my old coworker Greg. It's always a tough time losing someone that you love. But Ed, I know you were able to watch a lot of Larry Allen.
I was. That entire offensive line was amazing. It was really a clinic. And Larry Allen, when he came in the league, he was actually at right guard with Nate Newton at left guard and Eric Williams at left tackle. When Nate Newton retired, he moved over left to the left side, and left side, strong side. There's doesn't do it justice what they were able to do. This is a guy that he maxed out on bench press at 700 pounds
Yep, 700.
and squatted 900. That just ridiculous. One of the strongest men you've ever seen. And if you go back and watch tape of him, you will see that when he pulled to hit somebody, somebody was on the ground. And if you've watched enough football, you'll see a lot of pulling guards that will miss who they're supposed to hit, or uh, the person that they're assigned to won't make it to the ground. He he always got somebody on the ground, but he was such a gentle giant to everybody around him. Everybody absolutely loves him in the NFL community. And one one point that I would say is he's a guy that if you ever want to learn how to be an offensive lineman in the NFL, you don't need anybody else's tape. You don't need to go back through YouTube, which YouTube I have found plenty of old games on there. Just watch him, and you will know what it takes. Because there are people in the NFL that will tell you that there was nobody better in NFL history at the guard position than Larry Allen. And that's all I have to say about that.
Best guard, but like when people talk about goat positions at certain positions, I feel like it is always so hard when it comes to offensive linemen. But is Larry Allen like possibly the best offensive lineman of all time? Even though
The
there's
only the only offensive lineman that I've ever heard uh, as a guard be considered the GOAT before Larry Allen was Jack Hanna for the Patriots.
yeah,
He was a dirty, mean, just tough dude. And when I say dirty, I mean just he played within the rules of his day. Larry Allen, just as a because we love our stats, Larry Allen had 13 holding penalties and over 250 games played.
what about and God, I'm drawing a blank here. If you don't know who he is, that's okay. But there's this one offensive lineman. I think he played for the Seahawks majority of his career. Only had like one holding penalty his entire career. Do you know who I'm talking about? Was his name Orlando something? I don't know.
Um,
I'm drawing a I'm drawing a blank, but
I don't I don't know who you're talking about. The but as far as
Orlando Pace? Is that
no, I don't think it was Orlando
no?
Pace.
no,
Okay.
uh, but if we're gonna try and have some comps, I myself would actually put Bruce Matthews as the best offensive lineman ever, but that is partly because he played every position at an all pro level on the offensive line. And he was just a complete anchor for an organization that was in turmoil going from Houston to Tennessee. Just just all around the best offensive line player that I've ever seen. Larry Allen as part of that Dallas offensive line. Oh, it was so fun to watch both of those teams being from the state of Texas. Uh, Seeing offensive line play at its finest between both Dallas and Houston at that time.
So with David, you go.
I think I found who I'm looking for. I think it's Walter Jones that I was referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Uh, Piggyback off your point, Ed, with what you said, would you consider Magic Johnson the best basketball player? He played every position.
Uh, I think he's the best Laker of all time.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah, no, Magic Johnson, what he did in the finals, stepping up and playing center. I mean, granted, he was a really big guard at 6'9", but still, uh, Magic Johnson was legit for what he was able to do. But speaking of finals, NBA, Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics, and who would have thought the Mavericks were going to make it? I mean, I think it was pretty obvious the Celtics were going to make it with the season that they had, but the Mavericks guys, they really turned it on when they needed to, and here they are in the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics. Off the top of your head, who you think has the advantage the most here? I would imagine the three of us would probably say the Celtics.
Yeah. Well, and I also said this before, but you can say that you're surprised that the Mavericks made it, but they have been the hottest team in the NBA for the past few months, especially since adding PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they've
didn't
been.
realize how good of a defensive rating they had after the All Star break,
Yeah, it's
going into the
pretty
playoffs.
insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of those two. I mean, those two players alone. I mean, we know that Kyrie and Luca like to take off days on defense. So the fact that they're able to carry kind of their load that they're lacking, that kind of shows you. So, but Ed, do you agree here that Celtics would probably have the advantage right now?
I'm gonna go Mavericks.
Okay.
And when you play defense as well as the Mavericks have been playing, that's an infectious thing. It's not something that one person does and nobody else follows suit.
Yeah.
It's something that starts to bleed into the rest of the team. And to me, that's the Mavericks right now. Yes, the Celtics have had such a high efficiency and been the best team in the NBA for the course of the season, but we're not in the season right now. We're in the finals. And I think going into this, I think the Mavericks may have a bit of an advantage, even if it is just in the last 5 seconds to hit the shot to win the game, like they did almost every game during the Western Conference Final.
I I hate that I have to agree with that again. I really was looking forward to being a contrarian, but I can't argue against Ed. I
Dare
mean,
you?
okay, you suck. How's that? But no, listen, man. Like, the fact of the matter is that the Mavericks have faced a hell of a path. Like this reminds me when they last went to the finals in 2011, when on their way to facing the Miami Heat, they faced just an absolutely brutal road to the finals. Now, I don't think the road they face this year is nearly as hard as the road they faced back then, but it was still a pretty difficult road, especially compared to the Boston Celtics, who faced probably the easiest path of all time, just going through teams who they didn't face a single 50-win team, right? Like, this is going to be the first 50-win team that the Celtics face in the playoffs. So, I mean, listen, and I think I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit premature here, but I will say that I think the Celtics are going to win the finals. But when you're talking about who has the advantage, at least as far as how they're prepared and like and all that, I got to give the edge to the Mavericks.
Yeah, I mean the Mavericks pretty much. I'm sorry, the Celtics pretty much had the easiest game of shoots and ladders the entire playoffs, where they pretty much got the what is it? Is it the shoots that helps you win on shoots and ladders? It's been a while since I played, but they literally got shoots every time, where it was just the easiest path to victory for them. And yeah, normally that would make them at a disadvantage because they hadn't really been tested, but we talked about it a couple shows back where they had such a big lead going into the playoffs that they secured that number one seed. And then now they've got this massive days of rest. And they're kind of used to that because they haven't really been able to play as much because they had that big lead and they cruised right through the playoffs. So I think they're used to this. They aren't going to be thrown off fully, where some teams would be thrown off because they're not used to that rest. So it is kind of up in the air because the momentum on Dallas's side versus the Celtics overall as a team, they're already used to this. So I think that it's kind of a toss up here. But the real question that's being floated around is which dynamic duo is playing better going into this series? Because if you turn on any sports station right now, all they're talking about is Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and what they were able to do in the Western Conference Finals. Whereas Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, well, they haven't really been talked about because they won their series pretty easy and pretty early on, so they haven't really been able to be talked about as much. But going into this series, Ed, who are you taking out of those two players, out of those duos, that playing better, and do you expect them to continue that?
So a lot of uh, the media that I've been seeing, they love to pounce on what is the most recent,
Mm-hmm.
and that is part of the reason why I think you're getting more talk about Luca and Kyrie. You're gonna because they played more recently than Tatum and Brown,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, they're gonna have all the headlines. Not to mention, they are. I'm not gonna say flashier players, but I will say that uh, they are names that people can just say one word and know exactly who you're talking about with no issue whatsoever. Whereas Tatum and Brown, you actually have to almost spell out their name for people to know who you're talking about. And that is going to be a detriment to Luca and Kyrie because Tatum and Brown are coming to play. And I think that they are ready to show who they are as a dynamic duo in this series. Now, considering the defensive prowess that we were just talking about for the Mavericks, it'll be a challenge for them, but they have recently shown their ability to get themselves open off of ball screens and switch offs and everything in the book to make sure that they get open looks and hitting them when they get them. And I think that's going to continue.
I think who's already winning this battle is Jaylen Brown and the Celtics because they aren't taking the Anthony Edwards approach and calling out Kyrie Irving because that kind of pretty much awoke Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving was really able to show his uh, his presence that he's already been there, his experience, and that's one thing that I noticed, and that's why some people are talking about the Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic is because of the experience Kyrie Irving has going into the championship. The thing with, and I'm really interested with the Jaylen Brown and Kyrie Irving matchup. I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. Whereas Tatum and Doncic are pretty much going to say, who has the furthest range? I could shoot it from half court pretty much. That's how I see it being there.
Reminds me of the old Larry Bird, Michael Jordan commercials for a Big Mac.
Yeah, it's going to be a game of horse pretty much. So, David, your thoughts on these duos?
So when you look statistically speaking, I feel like, well, not feel like, Brown and Tatum have been a better duo, but I do feel like Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic have had more of an impact for their team's wins. If that makes any sense, because you look at how the teams are constructed, and with Boston, it feels like it's just they won 64 games for a reason. They play beautiful team basketball, both offense and defense. Whereas with the Mavericks, it kind of feels more like that like the Luka and Kyrie show that they're carrying them. Even though that probably does sound disrespectful to guys like Gafford and PJ Washington. So that's kind of how I would put it. Is that statistically Brown and Tatum have been better, but I feel like Irving and Doncic have had more of an impact for their team success. And also, I just want to take a little bit of this time to kind of just give a shout out to Kyrie Irving, because it really does seem like this dude has matured incredibly, like over the past few years. I mean, from my understanding, and if I am wrong on this, then my bad. But from my understanding, from my from what I've gathered, his final time with LeBron in Cleveland, I don't think things ended very well there. And Kyrie eventually tried to be his own, where he tried to lead the team. I think he did that with the Celtics, if I remember correctly. And then he quickly realized that, hey, like being the alpha dog of the team is actually not that easy. And again, I'm just saying what I understand here. I'm not, don't quote me on this, but from what I've heard, he actually called LeBron James and personally apologized to him and said, "Hey, dude, like you were right. Being the top dog of a team is not easy at all, right?" And I feel like it's because of that. That's why Kyrie has been able to mature more, and why he has comfortably embraced his role as Lucas Robin.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he really has, and I think that since they've finally found that role, they've looked like a better team. So, because I talked about them going into the playoffs early on, that they had yet to establish that, and now it seems like they have, and they've looked more complete because of that.
Dude,
Uh,
I also remember like when they added Kyrie Irving, and I think the Mavericks ended their season on like a 10 or 11 game losing streak, and everybody was laughing at the Mavs like, "See, this is what happens when you add Kyrie Irving." And now look where they are.
Well, with Kyrie Irving, what I would mention is that Mark Cuban is somewhat of an empathetic owner, and he reached out and met Kyrie where he is, not saying, Kyrie, you need to come be with us. You need to go from over there to being over here. He met Kyrie halfway in becoming part of the organization. Not just part of the team, but part of the organization. And that in and of itself helped Kyrie become part of the organization as a whole, and not just a player that shows up for the game. And that when he is fully invested, he is a dynamic player. And as a dynamic player, he is a fun player to watch.
Yeah, there's plenty about Mark Cuban that I don't agree with, and I've got criticisms about Mark Cuban, but overall, I don't think anybody can deny that overall he is a very good owner, even though he's not really the majority owner anymore. But still,
yeah. Uh, well, what would be the result historically for these teams if they won? And I'm going to start here, and I'm going to get absolutely roasted on this because my comparison here. But the Celtics, their 17 championships, I'm going to compare them to the New York Yankees. And yes, that's where I'm going to get roasted. Boston and New York, it is hard to compare those two cities and teams, but I know I'm crossing sports here. But the Yankees, all you hear is Yankees this, Yankees that, 27 rings, blah, blah, blah. The last time the Yankees won it is the same time the Celtics pretty much won it last. And for them to win this, for the Celtics to win this, it doesn't mean anything, in my opinion, being championship number 18. It's more so we were able to finally win another championship. It's been several years. It's been since what, 2008, something or somewhere around then. It's been way too long for them. And it's always, we got to get over this hump. We got to get over this hump, similar to the Yankees. And I think it would mean a lot to them to win it because they finally got over that hump. The Mavericks, however, we saw what they did to the Miami Heat, and that's when they won their one championship. And since then, they have nothing to really show for. So for them to get championship number 2 would probably mean bigger because it's hard to win an NBA championship unless you're the Celtics. You got 17 of them, but it is hard to win an NBA championship. So I think with the Mavericks to finally win another one here, number 2, it would really propel their franchise to newer and bigger heights.
well, I'll just say that first championship feeling is never going to get replaced. Like I remember in 2017 when the Florida Gators baseball team won their first and to date only national championship in baseball. It just felt so surreal because we were always going deep into the College World Series, and it just felt like we always choked. And when we finally won it all, like a weight had been lifted. So that feeling of winning your first ever title is never going to get replaced. But and I've mentioned this before that the Mavericks have had a ton of good luck with European stars. To go from Dirk Nowitzki to Luka Doncic is just absolutely insane. And yeah, if they do win title number 2, I think they're going to prove that their first title, wasn't a fluke. And hell, even if they don't win the title this year, I still think that that one ring was legit, especially when you consider the path that they faced, as I had mentioned, earlier before. Whereas with the Celtics, if they win the title, then I guess, statistically speaking, I guess you would have to consider them the greatest NBA franchise of all time. I mean, some people might say the Lakers because the Lakers not only are tied with them for the most championships, but they actually have more finals appearances. So some people would say that the Lakers are the best. So yeah, if Boston wins, then the baton gets passed back to Boston as the best NBA franchise of all time. So that's just my 2 cents.
Matthew, I'm going to somewhat agree with you, and I'll take it a step further and throw myself under the bus while doing it. These the high number of Celtics championships were part of an era in which there weren't that many teams in the NBA, and there was not a whole lot of big talent in the NBA the way that there is now. And that's very much how a lot of people see many of the championships of the Packers, of my Green Bay Packers. We have 13 world championships, but only 4 of them in the Super Bowl era.
Yeah,
So a lot of,
only, yeah.
yeah. Hey, yeah, you just hate us because you ain't us. Uh, but with the Celtics, another championship at this point would solidify themselves as a well-run organization during this time, not just pre 1950s television time. It is something that would help kind of steer uh, the Celtics back into, I don't want to say relevance, but uh, more of a historical aspect again versus just being the team that almost got there.
Yeah.
The team that almost got there. And the team that almost got there up to now, it has been the Mavericks. For many years, the Mavericks were always the bridesmaid and never the bride when we're talking about through the 80s and 90s before they had their complete downfall before Jason Kidd came along. So the Mavericks, I think, having a second championship makes them more relevant in the overall history of the NBA. But I think as far as what it would do for them historically through the lens of 2024, I think it means more to the Celtics.
Yeah. And also, for what it's worth, I think their championship in 2008 was like the only championship they won in the last 30 or 45 years or so.
Well, since 1986.
Oh, okay. So not
Yeah.
that long. So, well, 30 years maybe, but
Yeah.
But I just want to point out one quick thing with the Mavericks, and more about the city that they're in. And we may have mentioned this before, but Mavericks are in the final. The Stars are in the final. The Rangers won their final. Where are the Cowboys?
I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part.
Yeah.
I'm doing my
I'm doing
part.
my part.
I didn't do crap.
It's always so fun talking crap about the Cowboys. It's just so easy sometimes, and they're almost like the equivalent of the Bulls in basketball. It's been since the '90s, really, since they've
Yeah.
had a championship. So,
Well,
um,
it's funny that you
Well,
make that. that comparison because the Cowboys won when they had an elite head coach, and then he got ran out of town. And then with the Bulls, they had an elite head coach and Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, and then they got ran out of town. Phil Jackson more so than Michael Jordan, but the same logic still applies.
Yeah, but got to ask you guys, who wins this? Who wins the NBA Finals and why?
I think I'm gonna ride the Mavericks. And it's not going to be like it's been the past few years where it's 4 and 5 games. I think this is going to be a real series that drags on to 6 to 7.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not on the winner. I agree with you that it's going to go 6 games. I do have the Celtics winning 4-2, and I think the Mavericks are going to start out early. I think they are going to carry that momentum over, but I just think that Boston Celtics they're going to show just why they're the better team, and I think they're going to end up pulling it out 4 games to 2. David.
I'm gonna take the Celtics and in six. I was going to say five, but I think the Mavericks will be competitive enough to at least force a couple games there. I could give plenty of reasons as to why I think the Celtics are going to win, but ultimately, I think the one thing you have to consider is how hard they're going to play to uh, get Al Horford what would more than likely be the only ring that he'll ever win in his career. So I think that motivation is going to propel them, and so that's why I'm taking the Celtics.
Really quick, is Al Horford older than their head coach?
He is, yes,
That's what I
he
thought.
actually is by like 2 years.
Yeah, the Sean McVay effect. But uh, Ed's probably a little bit on cloud nine on this next topic, whereas David was so close to being on cloud nine, and yeah, unfortunately fell off. But the Women's College World Series for NCAA softball is now down to 2 teams, and lo and behold, Oklahoma made it, and they will be facing off against the number 1 seed this time around, the Texas Longhorns. And this is a rematch of the 22 College World Series, and we won't talk about that one, Ed. We're going to talk strictly about this one. This is Texas's season. They are the number 1 seed. How do we get here? Because this was crazy. The fact that Oklahoma, this wasn't their clearest shot here. Oklahoma is known to be, the juggernaut. It has to go through them, and they aren't the 1 seed this year. Ed, right?
No, Oklahoma is not the 1 seed. And I'm so happy for that. Uh, Now, this is going to be a series in which Texas and OU, they have played so many times already this season, and here we are again. It's round 3. This is the Clubber Lang uh, part of the series that we're getting out of these two teams. Now, Texas's road through the College World Series, it started out, plug your ears, David, with a run rule of Florida, and then wound up a 1-0 thriller of a game against Stanford. So here we are. They've just been waiting for uh, the final between OU and Florida to just be there, kick back, have a Mai Tai before they get down to business tomorrow.
How does this even work? Because and spoiler alert, I'm not an expert whatsoever when it comes to softball, but obviously the bracket is completely different from the baseball bracket because there's no way in hell that Team A can face Team B in the baseball tournament and then face each other again in the finals. Obviously, that's not happening, but that could have happened.
Well, it's because it's double elimination, and so essentially what it happens is it gives the top seeds that have won a better chance because if they hadn't lost, whereas the other teams like Stanford, they did lose a game earlier on, so
Mhm.
they had to win out. And same with Florida because when Florida lost, they had to win out also. So that's why where they had to beat Oklahoma twice. They did beat them yesterday, but Oklahoma hadn't lost yet, so that only counted once.
I mean, maybe it's happened in baseball, but like I have never seen a situation in baseball where two teams face each other twice, and one of those occasions was the finals. The way that we almost saw it with Florida and Texas.
Yeah, it was so close, and I was rooting for it. I mean, it's both your guys' teams. I think it would have added a lot of
Yeah,
excitement to it. And I know, David, it's softball, but
I
I
mean, we
still
had a after
Well,
the year.
David, since you don't have anybody to root for, there's room on the bandwagon. Come on down.
I'm definitely gonna root for you guys. And listen, like Florida fans, we can't be too mad. It sucks missing out on a chance to go to the finals, especially when we were right there. But after considering the cruddy season we had last year, to go from that to being just one win away from the finals, I mean, this was a very successful season. And listen, maybe I'm saying this because I am salty. And listen, OU softball is an incredible program, but you cannot tell me that they don't partially benefit from home cooking, but considering that the College World Series is played in freaking OKC, which is like what, an hour or two away from Norman.
Yeah, I some of the calls were a little questionable tonight when I was watching it. It definitely ruffled my feathers a little bit, but I think it's safe to say, unless you live in Norman, you're probably going to be pulling for Texas. But uh, so far throughout the Women's College World Series, has anybody really stuck out to you guys at all on who MVP possibly has really been the best player out there?
Just gonna throw this out there. As I said, I really don't know a lot about softball or of this matter,
Yeah,
so
that's
just to
okay.
be honest with you, I've got nothing.
That's all good. Ed, I don't know if you've been able to pay attention at all much, Ed. I know there's been a lot going on too.
There, I've seen names scroll across, so I'm going to lean on you, Matthew, for
Yeah.
the actual names. But the captain of the Texas team has been phenomenal as far as keeping the team together and just making it known that as long as they can get pitching to keep them in it, they'll win. And that's exactly what they've done.
Well, for me, my MVP, and this is actually 2 years in a row for me, and that's Nija Candidate from Stanford. She is the best pitcher in the country, and it's not her fault that her offense, her team can't produce runs. I mean, she has a .74 ERA in the whole tournament. I mean, the whole season. I mean, she is as legit as it comes as a softball pitcher, but unfortunately, she's not like Caglione for the Florida Gators baseball team, where she could go up there and hit dingers. She's not hitting at all, but she's done it 2 years in a row, been the best pitcher by far in the tournament. She's made it to, right there, the semifinals, and her team just can't score. They can't put up the run. So she's my MVP because without her, I don't even think that Stanford team's there. That's just how good of a pitcher she is. But if you want to talk about the MVPs going in for both of these teams in the finals, I feel like it's got to be the seniors for Oklahoma. Jennings, who hit the walk-off home run today against Florida. Sorry, Ed. Or sorry, David. But the seniors for them have been the leaders for Oklahoma. But it's going to be a fun series because it's you got to win 2 out of 3. And this year they've played each other 4 times, and out of those 4 times they are 2-2. So it can't get any more better and even matchup than this. But
Yeah,
like Ed has said before, I've said before, this is an Oklahoma team. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
yeah. And think of what's on the line here. You know, Oklahoma gets a chance to, I think, become the first softball team to ever four-peat, and Texas gets a chance to prevent that from happening, and especially preventing your most bitter rival, like from getting that. But yeah, Oh, and I almost forgot. I think us folks can probably figure out by now, but I said howdy in reference to me pulling for the Longhorns. Hook 'em. Am I doing it right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Someone take a picture really quick. Hurry.
Well, because
Screenshot. Screenshot.
well, because USF, University of South Florida, here in my home city of Tampa, they also have a very, very, very similar, but not exactly the same gesture.
On for South Florida, isn't it the thumb on the two,
I think so.
the
Yeah.
two like that?
Yeah.
Well, the real reason David's only doing that now is because they're still considered Big 12. But the real winner out of all of these is the SEC. The SEC is winning because look at the two teams that are in the finals here, and where are they going? Which conference? The SEC. So they're the real winners.
Hey, who did? And I'm asking out of curiosity, but who did Texas beat to get to the final?
Stanford. So
Stanford.
Oh,
it was close. I mean, 3 out of the 4 teams were going to be SEC teams next year with Florida,
yeah.
OU, and Texas. So the SEC, they just keep winning. They keep winning. So
It
they're the
just
real.
means more.
It just means more to them. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting matchup. It starts literally tomorrow. They take no days off. It's going to be very exciting. I say tomorrow, as of right now, it's tomorrow. But while the audience is watching, it'll be today, tonight. So it'll be, you're in for a thriller to be watching this. You're in for a thriller with sports because you got this. The very next day, you've got the NBA Finals, and then a couple of days after that, you got the Stanley Cup Finals, which we will be talking about here on this show. So it's finals everywhere. But that is about all we have today, folks. Appreciate you guys tuning in, supporting us. Please continue to hit that like and subscribe button, share these videos, and of course, drop in the comments your predictions. We've got a lot of finals here, like I said, so feel free to drop in your predictions on all of those, and just pretty much anything that you want to say, anything that opinions you have, we appreciate it. We like to hear it, and we like to give you ours back. That's just how we are. We're all are entitled to our own opinions here. But till next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.